precisely 10:47 a.m. on September 17, 2025, FBI Director Kash Patel's face turned ghostly white. Congressman Dan Goldman had just asked a simple question. 5 words. 12 seconds of silence followed. Was the president's name in the Epstein files? The mahogany-paneled House Judiciary Committee chamber felt like its oxygen had been sucked out through the ventilation grates. C-SPAN cameras captured every micro-expression. Senate staff stopped their whispered conversations mid-sentence. Even the stenographer looked up from his machine, sensing that history was being written in real time. Patel sat at the witness table like a defendant who'd just realized his alibi had collapsed. His knuckles gripped the edge until they turned bone white. Behind him, FBI officials maintained poker faces that fooled no one. But Goldman wasn't finished. The New York prosecutor had been waiting for this moment since the hearing convened at 9 a.m. Goldman's voice cut through the chamber's tension like a surgical blade. Does Donald Trump appear anywhere in the Epstein files? The question landed with precision-guided accuracy. Patel's lips parted, then closed. His eyes darted to the Republican side of the committee, searching for a lifeline that wouldn't come. When he finally spoke, his answer arrived wrapped in layers of bureaucratic evasion. We have released where President Trump's name is in the Epstein files, and everybody else. And all credible information that we are legally allowed to release has been released. Not yes, not no. The classic Washington non-denial denial convinced exactly no one in that room. Goldman leaned forward, his prosecutorial instincts activating. That wasn't my question, Mr. Director. It's not a complicated question. The temperature in the chamber dropped 15 degrees. 7 months earlier, Kash Patel had sat in the same building making a very different promise. During his confirmation hearing, his voice had rung with conviction. There will be no cover-ups, no missing documents, no stone left unturned. The words had earned him standing ovations from MAGA Republicans. But Ranking Member Jamie Raskin had come prepared with something more damaging than accusations. He'd brought receipts. The video began playing on the chamber's large screens. December 2023. Patel appearing on Benny Johnson's podcast, months before he became FBI director. Why hasn't the FBI released the Epstein client list? Johnson had asked. Patel's answer, preserved for posterity. Simple. Because of who's on that list. In another clip, his voice dripped with righteous indignation. Put on your big boy pants and let us know who the pedophiles are. The screens went dark. Raskin's voice filled the silence. In a few short months, how did you go from being a crusader for accountability to being part of the conspiracy and cover-up? The answer is simple. You said it yourself because of who's on that list. Patel's jaw clenched. The mask was beginning to crack. Goldman pressed harder, his questions coming faster now. Why haven't you released the witness statements from FBI interviews? We are releasing as much as legally allowed, Patel repeated, his voice strained. Sir, do you know how court orders work? It was a deliberate provocation. Patel exploded. Do you know how court orders work? Actually, Mr. Patel, Goldman's voice turned to ice. I was a prosecutor, a real prosecutor for 10 years. The insult hung in the air like smoke after a gunshot. Goldman continued his assault. Tell me which court order prevents you from releasing witness statements. Which specific order? Patel's answer came in fragments, each one contradicting something judges had already said publicly. He claimed documents were under seal, despite federal judges stating clearly that the FBI had full authority to release investigative files. He referenced protective orders that legal experts would later confirm didn't exist in the form he described. Goldman's eyes gleamed with predatory satisfaction. He'd caught his quarry in the lie. Then came the number that would define the hearing. Reports emerged during the testimony that the FBI had diverted hundreds of agents, from counterterrorism duties to frantically review 100,000 pages of Epstein files. Their mission, according to internal sources, flag and redact any mention of Trump's name. Agents had slept at their desks. The chief of the Record Information Disinformation section had reportedly resigned in protest. all this effort, all these resources? Not to find justice for victims, but to protect one man's reputation. Representative Zoe Lofgren's voice trembled with controlled fury. It's shocking to me that the FBI would think that erasing Trump's name from the Epstein files is a high priority when we have crime, national security threats, terrorism threats. It's shocking that's your highest priority. Patel had no good answer. Goldman's final question came after 43 minutes of evasion. Will you commit here today to releasing all witness statements that are not subject to court orders? We have released everything we are legally permitted. You are hiding the Epstein files, Mr. Patel. Goldman's voice rose for the first time. You are part of the cover-up. The words echoed off the chamber's marble columns. Patel's face flushed red. His voice turned defensive, almost desperate. Any allegations that I am part of a cover-up to protect child sexual trafficking and victims of human trafficking is patently and categorically false. But the damage was done. Everyone watching could see his desperation. His protestations only made the accusation more credible. Representative Hank Johnson had twisted the knife moments earlier. Why are you hiding pedophiles? Why are you shielding pedophiles? Why are you protecting pedophiles? That is maybe the most offensive thing you could say to me, Patel had responded. Yet he still wouldn't answer whether Trump's name appeared in witness statements. He still wouldn't commit to releasing FD 302 forms, standard FBI witness interview reports. He still wouldn't explain why video evidence remained classified when judges had already ruled it could be released. The most devastating moment didn't come from Democrats. Republican Representative Thomas Massie, the Kentucky congressman who'd led the charge to force Epstein file disclosure, turned his questions on Patel with surgical precision. You told me there's no credible evidence that Epstein trafficked women to anyone else. But survivors have told the FBI about at least 20 men. Are you saying these survivors aren't credible? Patel stumbled. That wasn't my assertion. That was the assessment of 3 separate U.S. attorneys. But you're repeating it now as FBI director, Massie interrupted. Will you meet with these survivors? Members of my bureau will meet with anyone who has new information. Will you personally meet with them? The silence stretched like a wire about to snap. We'll see what develops, Patel finally muttered. Even MAGA Republicans in the chamber shifted uncomfortably. Their champion was floundering. Within 23 minutes of Goldman's cover-up accusation, social media erupted. The Epstein cover-up began trending on X, reaching 847,000 posts within the first hour. CNN interrupted regular programming. Breaking news: FBI director accused of hiding Trump-Epstein connections. Fox News led with FBI director defends Epstein file handling as Democrats attack. But the real earthquake hit alternative media platforms. On TikTok, videos of the Goldman-Patel exchange went viral. One clip showing Patel's face when first asked about Trump's name had been viewed 4.2 million times by evening. Conservative influencers who'd championed Patel months earlier now turned on him. Matt Walsh posted, "This is a profound betrayal. Epstein represents how the corrupt and powerful are never held accountable." Dan Bongino, Trump's deputy FBI director, reportedly considered resigning over the controversy. The president himself remained conspicuously silent. No Truth Social posts, no statements, nothing. By the time the 5-hour hearing concluded at 3:14 p.m., Patel had evaded direct questions 12 times. 12 times he'd been asked specifically about Trump's presence in the files. 12 times he'd deflected with variations of, "We've released all credible information." Legal analysts pointed out what judges had already made clear. Patel had full authority to release witness statements, interview summaries, and investigative files. Court orders didn't prevent this. Grand jury secrecy rules didn't apply to FBI 302 forms. The only thing stopping him was a decision made somewhere in the chain of command. But by whom and why? Representative Ted Lieu's words resonated. America, that's a huge red flag. The FBI director could not answer whether Donald Trump was on Epstein's client list. The conspiracy theories Patel had once stoked on podcasts were now consuming him. The algorithms he'd fed with speculation about who's on that list were now demanding answers he refused to provide. As darkness fell over Washington on September 17th, one thing became crystalline clear. The man who'd promised no stone left unturned had spent 5 hours turning over nothing. The man who'd demanded others put on your big boy pants had hidden behind the same legal excuses he'd mocked when others used them. The man who'd said the files weren't released because of who's on that list was now the gatekeeper protecting precisely that information. And when a federal prosecutor asked him 12 times whether the president's name appeared in evidence of the largest sex trafficking case in FBI history, he couldn't say yes. But he also couldn't say no. That silence stretched across 5 hours, 12 evasions, and hundreds of thousands of social media posts told America everything it needed to know. The question now wasn't whether Patel was hiding something. The question was who he was protecting and why the truth was worth sacrificing every promise he'd made to get his job. In the end, Goldman's accusation would define Patel's tenure more than any arrest statistic or security briefing ever could. You are part of the cover-up. 5 words. Permanent damage. History would remember September 17th, 2025, not as the day Patel defended the FBI's honor, but as the day the cover-up collapsed under questioning and the director chose silence over truth. 72 hours later, the consequences began to manifest. 3 senior FBI officials submitted confidential complaints to the Inspector General. Their allegations: political interference in an active investigation, obstruction of evidence disclosure, retaliation against agents who questioned the redaction process. None would speak publicly. All feared career destruction. By September 20th, Senate Judiciary Committee Chair Dick Durbin announced a formal inquiry, not into Epstein, into Patel's handling of the files. The hunter had become the hunted. Goldman's office received leaked documents, heavily redacted FBI memos showing direct communication between the White House counsel's office and FBI records management during the file review. Timestamps revealed midnight exchanges, urgent directives, phrases like politically sensitive material and executive privilege considerations. None of this was supposed to exist in an independent law enforcement agency. On September 22nd, a federal judge in Manhattan issued a scathing order. Judge Annalisa Torres demanded the FBI explain its legal basis for withholding witness statements within 14 days. Her ruling cited Patel's own confirmation hearing promises as evidence of bad faith. The director's testimony contradicts his agency's actions, Torres wrote. This court will not tolerate deliberate obstruction masquerading as legal compliance. The 14-day clock was ticking, and in a Georgetown townhouse, lawyers were preparing something far more explosive. 5 Epstein survivors had united. Their lawsuit wouldn't target Epstein's estate. It would target the FBI itself for deliberately concealing evidence of co-conspirators to protect political interests. Their lead attorney told reporters, "If Patel won't answer whether certain names are in the files, discovery will." The cover-up wasn't ending. It was just entering its most dangerous phase.